a sign-up sheet if you could pass it around and sign your names for the enrolled students.
Thank you, Tim. It's a pleasure to be here today. I would like to start out with the first slide. I have about 50 slides, so I'm going to have to move through those slides pretty quickly. Another title for today's presentation might be a review of our institutional roots. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to start prior to the formation of what we now call the Department of Botany and Plant Sciences, because we would not be in existence today were it not for the fact that the U.S. Department of Agriculture was established many years ago, in fact in 1862, and shortly after that the University of California was founded in 1868. Initial campus, as you probably know, was Berkeley, and that, as strange as it may seem today, was a land grant institution. And in 1874, the University of California Agricultural Experiment Station was founded initially at Berkeley. And in 1875, a fellow by the name of Hilgard, Eugene Hilgard, a soil scientist, was charged with the development, with the responsibility of developing the College of Agriculture at Berkeley. And he was also charged with developing a system-wide agricultural experiment station. And this is a picture which appears in a book of that individual. Significant to what we now call UCR was something that happened in about 1875 when 2 or perhaps 3 navel orange trees were received by either Mrs. Tibbets or her husband Luther. And these navel orange trees originated, I shouldn't say originated, these navel orange trees went from Bahia, Brazil to Washington, D.C. at the plant introduction station there. And then several trees were sent to California and several trees were sent to Florida. And this formed the foundation for the navel orange industry of California. So the navel orange industry of California originated in Riverside, virtually in the backyard of Mr. and Mrs. Tibbets, where they watered these trees by throwing used dishwater onto the soil around the plants. And this is a picture of Mrs. Tibbets. It's likely that the Washington navel orange tree was transported from Portugal to Brazil, from which we received it, and it's likely that what we call the Washington navel orange tree originated in China and somehow found its way to Portugal. So the current thinking is China to Portugal to Bahia, Brazil to Riverside, California, and currently about 85 to 90% of the navel orange production in California resides in the San Joaquin Valley. Most of the navel orange production in this area has been replaced by various industrial and residential developments. Many years ago, color photography was non-existent. And so the U.S. Department of Agriculture at that time had a number of watercolor artists who received samples and created watercolor renditions of those samples. And this is a 19 and 16 watercolor of the Washington navel orange that was sent from Riverside to the watercolor artist in Washington, D.C. In 1880, we had about 10,000 acres of citrus in what was then called the citrus belt. And currently we have, this says about 250,000 acres in California. Currently it's probably about 275,000 acres of navel oranges in California. And it was that navel orange industry and the other kinds of citrus that were grown in the citrus belt stretches from about Pasadena to Redlands along the foothills of the mountain ranges that you can see in the distance. That is, you can see those mountain ranges in the distance on a clear day. In 1881, the first citrus packing house was constructed in Riverside, and shortly thereafter in 1882, the first book on citrus growing in California was published. The title of the book is Orange Culture in California, and it was written by a Los Angeles nurseryman by the name of Thomas Gary. And in 1884, the Gage Canal construction started, and you probably have often wondered as you go different places in Riverside, what is this cement structure crossing under the highway or crossing the campus or whatever? And that's the remnants of the Gage Canal. And it was the Gage Canal that transported water to citrus producing areas that permitted the citrus industry to start in Riverside. And this is a picture of the individual who was instrumental in mapping and constructing and putting the Gage Canal into existence. The Gage Canal traverses the campus, the Riverside campus. And it might be informative just to, maybe I don't have time to read the language underneath this, but, well, maybe I should. The source of the water was the San Bernardino Valley Basin. He engineered a canal that required the boring of more than 12 miles of tunnels to bring water to the undeveloped upper plains of Riverside. That's quite a feat when you consider the many years ago when that took place and the absence of heavy equipment that we now have available to us. In 1885, Riverside won a gold medal for the superiority of its oranges at the New Orleans World Fair. And there have been many, many citrus awards since that time. And on a later slide, I'll show you a comment made by the Queen of England that perhaps constitutes the most valuable award that we have ever received. In 1887, the federal act called the Hatch Act provided $15,000 per year for each agricultural experiment station. That's, in today's world, that is peanuts. And it was not a tremendous amount of money back then when you consider that this was $15,000 per year for the agricultural experiment station of a given state. The first rail shipment of navel oranges to Boston occurred in 1887. And also the first rail shipment of Valencia oranges to Chicago occurred in 1887. And for successful rail shipment, this required the development of refrigerated and ventilated box cars, rail cars. And for the citrus industry to really flourish in California, there was a requirement for the development of all sorts of packing house equipment. And the organization that you now know as FMC Incorporated at that time was Food Machinery Corporation, which originated right here in Riverside. And now FMC Inc. is involved in all sorts of things in addition to citrus packing house equipment. This is a watercolor of a Valencia orange that was sent from Riverside to Washington, D.C. in 1915. The Vidalia beetle was introduced from Australia to control cottony cushion scale, which came into California from Australia. Cottony cushion scale was a major pest of citrus, and even today can be a major pest of citrus when we have an upset in the biological control of that organism. This is the let me show you a picture of the Vidalia beetle, which is right here. And you see the cottony cushion scale right there, and eggs of the beetle, and nymphs of the beetle. And it's the Vidalia beetle that brought cottony cushion scale under control. And this is one of the earliest and perhaps the most impressive example of biological control. In 1888, a citrus cooperative was organized in Riverside. At that time, 11 growers, citrus growers in Riverside, decided to establish a small cooperative. In 1895, that little cooperative became the Southern California Fruit Growers Exchange. And in 1904, that Southern California Fruit Growers Exchange became the California Fruit Growers Exchange, because by then we were growing citrus in the San Joaquin Valley. And that cooperative, which started in Riverside in 1952, was renamed Sun-Kissed Growers Incorporated. At that time, the California Fruit Growers Exchange decided to spend a whole bunch of money, I think it was something like $1 million, when they purchased from a private individual the trademark, the Sun-Kissed trademark. Now, why am I giving you all of this information? Well, in 1891, the University of California launched Farmers Institutes. This is where agricultural researchers went out into the farming community to convey information to the farmers so that they could do a better job of growing their crops. And I think it's fair to say that this is the roots of cooperative extension. There were two federal acts that led to the establishment, or some enabling legislation called the Morrill Acts of 1862 and 1890. And I think it's fair to say that today's cooperative extension started, the roots of it started way back in 1891. And you perhaps know that in the Department of Botany and Plant Sciences, we currently have cooperative extension specialists, members of the department, whose roots could probably be traced back to 1891. And they became members, officially became members of the department in 1988. The first overseas shipment of navel oranges went by rail to New York and steamer to Liverpool, and Queen Victoria pronounced the fruit palatable. And remember, I said that's probably the highest award that we have ever received. If you know the reticence of the English to ever compliment you on anything, you understand why I say that. In 1895, the Riverside Horticultural Club was formed to do research. And a particular individual in that club by the name of John Henry Reed by 1915 had published about 150 semi-technical and popular papers on citrus and other horticultural topics. And it's the activities of that horticultural club that probably led to the establishment of the Citrus Experiment Station here in Riverside. The Riverside Horticultural Club also organized the very first fruit frost warning service in the United States, which subsequently was replaced by the U.S. Weather Bureau's fruit frost warning service. So Riverside was the site of quite a lot of activities leading up to the establishment of the Citrus Experiment Station. A number of years ago, 10 years ago, we were fretting on this campus because of the downsizing of the UC system. Well, history repeats itself, as somebody just told you a few minutes ago. The same thing was happening in 1903. But in 1905, shortly after a severe downsizing, the state legislature mandated the establishment of a citrus experiment station. And in 1907, on Valentine's Day, the Citrus Experiment Station was officially established here in Riverside. Not on this particular site, but on a site at the base of Mount Rubidoux, on some leased acreage. And this is a picture of John Henry Reed, that very active member of the Riverside Horticultural Club, who is credited with the founding of the Citrus Experiment Station here in Riverside. The very first director of the Citrus Experiment Station was a plant breeder, Weber. We have on campus Weber Hall. That's the reason for the naming of that particular building. He was the first director and served as director from 1913 until 1929. And here's a picture of Weber. In 1914, this particular site became the Citrus Experiment Station. And the new site was not dedicated until 1918. And this is a picture of the original building. Some of you may recognize this building. It's still on campus, and it serves as the home base for the Graduate School of Business Administration. Our department, the horticulture department, occupied that building for many years. We left that building in 1965 because the building was declared unsafe from an earthquake standpoint. The building has subsequently been retrofitted and otherwise renovated, and houses, as I said, the Graduate School of Administration. But our department was housed in that building along with a couple of other departments and the director of the experiment station up until about 1965, when we moved into Bachelor Hall. And Leon D. Bachelor, a horticulturist, was the second director of the Citrus Experiment Station, and now perhaps you know why we spell bachelor the way we do. It's spelled in honor of a person, not the state of absence of marriage. And he served until 1951. This is a picture of Leon Batchelor, the second director of the Citrus Experiment Station. Homer Chapman, a soil scientist, served as acting director in 1951. And this is a picture of Homer Chapman, who is alive at the age of 102, living in Irvine, California, in a retirement center there in Irvine. I think he moved there about 8 or 10 years ago. He still has a very, very sharp mind. Alfred Boyce was the third director of the Citrus Experiment Station. He became director in 1952, and in 1959 he became not only director but dean of the College of Agriculture. And you notice I say dean of the College of Agriculture. We are now in the College of Natural and Agricultural Sciences. So at one time there were two colleges on campus that were combined into what we now call the College of Natural and Agricultural Sciences. And in 1961, our name was changed from the Citrus Experiment Station to Citrus Research Center and Agricultural Experiment Station in recognition of the wide array of crops that we currently do research on. And as a matter of fact, way back when we were just the Citrus Experiment Station, we did a lot of research on other crops, not just citrus. And I think the reason for that is that when they brought these researchers in to this new Citrus Experiment Station, those individuals brought with them interest in other crops. And also, and the university wisely permitted those individuals to continue to do research on those crops of their initial interest. And in addition to that, the agricultural industries of Southern California were placing demands on Citrus Experiment Station researchers such that we simply could not ignore those other crops. And this is a picture of Boyce. He passed away several years ago. He and Homer Chapman came to Riverside in 1926 and started doing research on citrus. Homer Chapman, mineral nutrition primarily, and Al Boyce, control of insects. And just think now, Homer Chapman is still around, and Al Boyce was around until just a few years ago. Al always smoked a pipe, finally gave it up, and died of throat cancer. Boise Day, a plant physiologist, a member of the Department of Horticulture, became director in 1968, and at that time Mac Duggar, an emeritus member of our department, became dean. And shortly thereafter, Boise Day went to Berkeley to accept an administrative position in the vice president's office, and Mac Duggar at that time became dean and director. Picture of Boise Day. His principal interest was chemical weed control. Picture of Mac Duggar. You have seen him from time to time in the halls of Bachelor Hall. And then from 1981 through 1988, Erwin Sherman, a parasitologist, served as dean and director. And he retired in 1996, I believe. but is still very active. He has a major research program underway, still in parasitology, and he is chairman of the Academic Senate. Still very active. And that's really true of a lot of emeriti faculty, is that a lot of them are still quite active. Picture of Irwin Sherman in earlier days. Seymour D. Van Gundy, a nematologist, served as interim dean and then as dean and director from 1988 until 1993. Picture of Van Gundy, and he still comes to the campus rather frequently, and like most of us, he doesn't have as much hair on his head as he used to. But I think otherwise you would recognize him if and when you see him walking from one of the greenhouse areas down towards Bachelor Hall and on over to Weber Hall. You know this fellow. Oh, let me apologize. After Van Gundy stopped serving as dean in 1993, Dallas Rabenstein, a chemist, served as interim dean for 1 year. And then in 1994, Dr. Clegg became dean and served as dean and director until recently. And I think perhaps you know full well that he's a geneticist, and his interest is molecular evolution and population genetics. And currently, Stephen Angle is serving as the interim dean. And I've got to speed things up a bit. Now, Weber's Citrus Experiment Station was composed of the following units: agricultural chemistry, entomology, plant pathology, plant physiology, plant breeding, orchard management, biological control, which started out as a state program, but then was transferred in 1923 to the Citrus Experiment Station. So this was a California Department of Agriculture program until 1923. And I think what you can do is take a look at the names of those departments and sort of predict what the roots are for our department. Plant physiology, plant breeding, orchard management, at least those three. And a little bit later you'll learn of some additional components of our department. The history of our departmental names started out as orchard management, 1916 to 1953. Became the Department of Horticulture by the combining of orchard management and plant breeding in 1953. And then a name change in 1961, no compositional change, but a name change in 1961. And in 1970, the then existing small Department of Agronomy and small Department of Vegetable Crops and the Department of Horticulture joined forces to become the Department of Plant Sciences, and existed in that state from 1970 to 1978. And then in 1978, botanists from the Department of Biology and faculty of the Department of Plant Sciences joined forces to create the Department of Botany and Plant Sciences. And at that time, cooperative extension specialists were somewhat attached to our department, but were not members of our department. And then in 1988, they became members of the department. Okay, department chairs. L.D. Batchelor, and I showed a picture of him, and I'll show him again. I apologize, I do not have a picture of E.R. Parker, who served as the second chair of our department. He was a horticulturist, mineral nutrition researcher. Bill Stewart, I do not have a picture of him. I apologize for that. He served for several years as chair of our department, and his interest was plant growth regulator research in citrus crops. Walt Reuter, who was chair of the department when I came on board, served from 1956 to 66, a 10-year period of time. He is still alive. He lives in San Diego County. Boise Day was chairman of our department for a while. He then became, if you'll recall, director. Boise passed away 8 or 10 years ago. Bob Soost served as chairman of our department for many years. I'm happy to inform you that I saw Bob Soost about 6 months ago. He's still very much alive, lives in Northern California. I was chairman for a period of time when we were the Department of Plant Sciences, and continued as chairman after we became the Department of Botany and Plant Sciences. Irwin Ting from 1982 through 1988, and Rob Leonard from 1988 until 1994, and then we have some additions which I will mention to you in a few minutes. This is a picture again of Batchelor, the first chairman of our department. Walt Reuter, I mentioned him. I mentioned that he has moved to San Diego County. He was born in New Zealand and came to the United States at the age of 1 or so, and for many years resided in Florida, and came here on sabbatical leave 1 year, and the next year the campus decided to invite him to come as a permanent member of the faculty, and as in fact as chair of the department. Boise Day, I've already mentioned, as chairman of our department. Weed control is his specialty. Bob Seuss, genetics and breeding, primarily breeding of citrus, but he also did some work on tomatoes. Irwin Ting was chair of our department for about 6 years. He retired, I think, in 1996 and is still around doing other things. Rob Leonard served as, his specialty was ion transport, and he served as our department chairman from 1988 to 1994, and he left here to become head of the Department of Plant Science at the University of Arizona in Tucson, and he's still there and still serving as head of that department. You know this fellow, Tony Hall, was chairman of our department from 1994 to 1997, and you probably know that his specialty is environmental physiology. Betty Lord, currently serving as chair of our department, and as I understand it, plans to go on sabbatical leave at the end of this calendar year, and stepping into her shoes will be Jean Nothnagel. You probably know that Betty Lord's interest is developmental biology and reproduction, And you probably know that Gene Nothnagle's interest is plant cell surface research with particular emphasis on senescence. And I'm available for questions. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Charlie Coggins. There's nobody who can tell the history of the department of Professor Coggins. We're very fortunate to have it. So let's go ahead and open this up to questions for Professor Coggins. Kathy?
Oh, yes.
Do you have any idea like what $15,000 a year would be comparable now?
No, I don't. I'm sorry. I have not made that calculation, but you're right. It would be a tremendous sum now. But I have not tried to make that calculation. Yes, Darlene?
I wanted to ask you about Weber.
Yes.
A little plaque and some psychiatrists down next to our building in a little courtyard in front of the area that used to be the Bionic Library. They're dedicated to him.
Yeah.
And there are a number of rare gymnosperms that are planted on the campus that Louis Erickson told me that he thinks that Weber might have planted.
Uh-huh.
So do you know anything about Weber's interest in gymnosperms?
No, I don't, Darlene. I'm sorry, I don't.
What did you do his research on? I assume it was not gymnosperms.
No, it was not gymnosperms. He was, I don't know much about his research. It's my understanding that he liked to get on his horse and ride around and give directions to people out there doing research. That's the scuttlebutt. But he was, I think he was primarily a taxonomist. But I'm not absolutely certain of that, Darlene. I didn't do my homework on Weber. Yes, sir.
Was there a shift in the focus of the department when the biology people were incorporated into the plant science department? Was there any fundamental change in the emphasis given to basic research, or was that always a factor in agricultural research? By basic research, I mean like the basic science as opposed to applied.
Sure. I understand the question, and as it turns out, a lot of basic research was underway in horticulture, in orchard management, in those old departments, and certainly a lot of applied research, a lot of practical research was underway. But the University of California, I think, essentially forever, has encouraged researchers, either individual researchers or units as a whole, to pursue not only fundamental research, but practical research. And the very nature of the institution at that time, Citrus Experiment Station, dictated a lot of emphasis should be placed on applied or practical research. But the university has never discouraged fundamental research by individual researchers or by units. Now, it's true that when you said when the botanists were incorporated into plant sciences, I don't view it that way. I think it's more accurate to say that when we joined forces and became the Department of Botany and Plant Sciences, certainly when we did that, we all of a sudden became a faculty composed of individuals who, some of those individuals were doing almost exclusively fundamental research. Now, I mentioned that in 1988, cooperative extension people officially became members of our department. So currently what we have in our department is we have some individuals who are placing almost all of their efforts into fundamental research. Some individuals who are putting almost all of their efforts into applied research, mostly cooperative extension people who by and large now have joint appointments, agricultural experiment station appointments as well as cooperative extension appointments. And individuals who are doing a bit of both. Tony Hall, for example, has done quite a lot of fundamental research and has done quite a lot of practical research for which he's recently received a major award. At the time we were the Department of Plant Sciences, we hired at that time Darlene DeMason and Betty Lord. And we expected those individuals to do some practical research, but to focus primarily on fundamental research. I think that's a fair statement to make. A lot of people... First two women to be hired in the department. That's correct. And at that time, we didn't know exactly where they would be going in their research, but we knew that their emphasis would be fundamental biology. And that predates the joining together of botanists from biology with plant science people. Did I skirt the issue effectively? Do you have another question for me?
What do you see as the future of the department?
What's the future of the department? Well, I suspect that the future of the department is more and more fundamental research and less practical research for a couple of reasons. One is that's what our administrators are asking us to do, and if we don't do what our administrators ask us to do, we might lose our jobs. The other reason that I think we're probably going in that direction is that there are a lot of organizations out there today who are equipped to do practical research. Apart from the University of California, we have state universities, and we have private enterprise doing a lot of practical research. So what we need to do is to provide the fundamental underpinnings for that kind of research. Another one? Well, thank you very much.